All right, the indefinite suspension of NFL running back Ray Rice is over. He can play as soon as a team signs him. Former U.S. District Judge Barbara Jones ruled Commissioner Roger Goodell abused his discretion when he increased Rice's suspension from 2 games to indefinite for punching his now wife, Janae. Joining me right now, CNN commentator LZ Granderson and Keith Reed, former senior editor at ESPN, the magazine. Good to see both of you gentlemen. All right, Keith, you first. Okay, so how big a hit is this to the NFL and maybe Roger Goodell for that matter?
It's a pretty big rebuke for Roger Goodell, right? I mean, the judge, if you read the 17-page decision, she essentially says that Roger Goodell was just not credible. She stopped short of calling him a liar, but she says she just does not believe any of the rationales that Roger Goodell gave for levying the second indefinite suspension of Ray Rice. That's a pretty huge blow to the man's credibility, I would say.
And so, LZ, not credible, Roger Goodell, if that's what the judge is saying, what does that do to his job and perhaps his future as the commissioner?
Probably nothing. And the reason why I say this is because this is not the first arrest for domestic violence or the first sort of public relations snafu that Roger Goodell has endured in his tenure, and he remains mainly because he's been very profitable for the NFL. And until that changes, I don't see any reasons for the owners to be motivated to have him remove or demand that he resigns. When you start seeing major advertisers pull out, when you start seeing a huge hit in Super Bowl numbers and the money around that, then perhaps. But until then, no way.
All right, here's the NFL statement. Brian McCarthy, NFL Vice President of Corporate Communications, saying this, quote, Judge Jones's ruling underscores the urgency of our work to develop and implement a clear, fair, and comprehensive new personal conduct policy. So, LZ, is that the answer until there is that kind of financial, I guess, hit that the league could take from advertisers, Super Bowl, all that you just mentioned?
Well, the only way, in my opinion, that the NFL is really going to look as if they're taking this situation seriously is that when they begin looking at this policy, not as just something that impacts the players, but something that impacts everyone who works with the NFL. We know that there have been incidents involving owners who have broken the law. We know there are other layers of executives that have broken the law. Referees, coaches who have had run-ins with authorities. And so until you start seeing a consistent through line, not just players who are in front of the cameras, but the entire organization in general, I think we should always question whether or not the NFL is serious about this issue.
So it's a look the other way problem, Keith. How significant, how deeply embedded is that?
It's a very significant problem, and I'm glad you put it that way. You said it's a look the other way problem. Remember, at the heart of this issue with Ray Rice was the fact that the NFL came back with a punishment for Ray Rice that was very short. It was only 2 weeks, right? And this was their way of burying the problem. Ray Rice was only suspended indefinitely not because the NFL was concerned about their employees, not because they were concerned about Janae Rice, not because they were concerned about the many women fans that they have. They levied that second suspension for damage control because they were taking hits from guys like me and guys like LZ in the media on programs like this. And so the NFL really needs to show that it's about to get serious about domestic violence in some systemic way, but not just with a punishment here, but with really having some serious programs that deal with their players and executives and owners at every level.
So Ray Rice is now a free agent. Anyone can pick him up if they want to. The Ravens not going to do that, even though they just let him go. So LZ, we've heard from Janae a little bit today. People will hear from her later on in the week because of another network's interview. But then what do you want to hear from Ray Rice? What does another prospective team need to hear from Ray Rice before they were to pick him up?
They need to hear remorse. You know, his productivity was down last year before this incident in 2013, in large part because he suffered a hip flexor injury. But the last 4 seasons prior to that, Ray Rice was one of the most productive running backs in the league. And so, believe me, there are teams who are suffering, a tailback who are looking at this, and what they want to hear from him is a layer of remorse. I don't necessarily think that he won't be back this year, but he definitely will be back the following year, following season, if he shows that remorse.
All right, Keith, real quick, less than 10 seconds. What do you want to hear from Ray Rice?
Yeah, I think he's going to have a little bit more of a road to redemption I think he's going to have to take the same path to, say, a Michael Vick. He's going to have to be very, not just contrite, but very, very public about his contrition and work on that issue and show that he's changed and be an advocate on behalf of victims of domestic violence in order to get back into the NFL.
All right, Keith Reed, LZ Granderson, always good to see you, gentlemen. Thanks so much.